1101, BMGT 1101. We are going to get started really quickly on Chapter 1. The title of Chapter 1 is Taking Risks and Making Profits Within the Dynamic Business Environment. So, I mean, if you just read that title, I mean, it's extremely vague. I mean, who knows exactly what we're talking about when you just read that title. We're going to try and break it down into a couple key areas, things that I want you to be able to take away. If you go back and listen to the lecture for the introduction for this class, I take out a lot of different slides. I take out a lot of things that we're not going to cover. And so when you listen to these lectures, really pay special attention to what we do go over. And also from my standpoint, I'm not going to spend my time just reading the slides for you here. I want to give a little context to what we're talking about. So be able to put all your answers, all your thought processes in context as well. So let's get started with Chapter 1. You know, if you just read about goods and services and you go through your daily life, you interact with these things on a day-to-day basis, on a minute-to-minute basis. But if you also think about it, very few times that we are really purchasing things now are from a goods standpoint. Very few things are manufactured that are tangible. The United States is increasingly going towards a service-based economy, and that's because it's easy to replicate. There's a lot of different things involved with that, but if you go and you want to make, you know, it gives the example of 1,000 computers. Well, there's a process to be able to do that. There's machinery, there's labor, there's insurance that you have to pay for that. However, if you can be a consultant on computer systems, if you can be a computer repair person, all those different things associated with the actual computer, actual technology, then you don't have to replicate it. You don't have to manufacture it. All that knowledge, all that information is contained inside you or inside the business. And what we really get from that is that we get a lot more bang for our buck. We get a lot more from our personal standpoint. And we're going to talk a little bit about risks and things like that. We don't have to set so much out when we're actually doing consulting work. Obviously, from a business, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think we all know what an entrepreneur is. But when you really look at that definition there of who risks time and money to start and manage a business, well, what does that really mean? I mean, what does that risk mean? You know, if you go out and we go back to that computer example, you are putting a lot of money on the line just to start a computer company, and who knows if you're going to be successful or not. But when you are able to become a consultant, when you're able to provide a service to people, then you're not necessarily putting as much money, as much risk out on the line, and you can replicate that business, you can replicate that process over and over and over again. If you look at revenue and profit and loss, obviously very straightforward from that standpoint, but I also want you to be able to bring these things down to a personal level, right? What does revenue mean? What does loss mean? What do costs mean for you? You know, whatever income you bring in as a person. You know, if you can't balance your budget and you spend way too much, then you're losing money from a personal standpoint, from a net worth standpoint every time. If you look at the definition of risk, and I don't know why they have the Olsen twins there, but you know, it's how willing are you to put yourself out there? Do you really believe in this process? Do you have a business plan? Do you have a feasibility study that kind of backs that up? Look at standard of living as well. One of the things that I really like to talk about with standard of living is everybody likes to complain, right? I mean, I really like Twitter, and one of the things that one of the hashtags you always see going around on Twitter are the hashtag first world problems, and you know, standing in line too long, Starbucks coffee's way too hot, hashtag first world problems. Well, we really have it pretty darn good if you look at it from that perspective. If you look at how much money we earn, what that money can buy, we are way ahead of the world in a lot of different areas. We'll look at that, you know, if you get into some of the different classes here and you investigate how much people earn in other countries. I know Nike has had problems with this. I know Apple has had problems with this. You know, we are getting paid, you know, we're in the top 2%, top 1% of the entire world in terms of the money we make. And what we can buy with that, what our purchasing power is with that, is extraordinary. It also goes to, you know, what our quality of life is going to be. You know, do you have the ability to make decisions on your own? Do you have the ability to start a business if you want to? We'll talk a little bit about entrepreneurship here and in future chapters, but do you even have access to all these key things? A lot of places, if you talk to your fellow classmates, you don't have that. Whether it's political freedom, whether it's the ability to make choices about your future, about your education, some of those things aren't going to be in place. Whenever we make decisions, whenever an entrepreneur makes decisions, whenever a business makes decisions, most of the time they take into account stakeholders. These stakeholders are going to be people who are impacted by any decision you make. So I want to take this from a personal standpoint again, right? When you make the decision to come back to school, people are impacted by that. Columbus State gets some type of revenue from you coming back to school. Whether you get financial aid or not, they get some sort of revenue. If you look at your local gas station, they're going to get more money from you if you're driving down to campus or not. The babysitter, if you have kids, is going to get money because you're going back to school. Your family may have less income in the short term, but more income in the future. So when we look at these things from a personal standpoint, it's kind of easy to see who all gets impacted from that. But if you also look at it from a business's standpoint, and let's look at Zettler Hardware up in Worthington. You know, they've been in business for, I don't know, maybe like 60, 70, 80 years, but they just went out of business here in the last month or so. You look at all the people that business reached, right? Banks, insurance people, suppliers, vendors, customers, employees, government, taxes, schools. All these different people get impacted by the decisions of people to go into business, go out of business, hire people, fire people. And so when you start thinking about stakeholders, just think about all those different people that are impacted by a decision that you make or a decision that other people can make. When we look at outsourcing and insourcing, I always like the Seinfeld reference. He outsources, I believe, or he imports exports. He imports matchsticks and potato chips or something like that. But anyway, if you look at what this kind of means, you know, can we get rid of operations that don't make us a lot of money, that don't have a lot of value, but that cost us money? If you look at some big companies recently, Burger King, I believe, just bought Tim Hortons. But Burger King decided to move their operations to Canada. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they do that, but they outsourced all that, right? They did it primarily for the tax advantages. But that is huge outsourcing. Burger King is not a Canadian company. Tim Hortons is not an American company. But there's certain reasons why they go to all those different locations. There's certain reasons why they bring business in, why they take business out of local economies. I know most of you people aren't going to recognize who Muhammad Yunus is. He started Grameen Bank probably 30 years ago, actually probably longer than that, and he won a Nobel Prize. He actually went to school here in the United States, went back to his native land. I want to say it's India, but I don't think that's right. Bangladesh. And what he did is he started a bank, and he started a bank that was based upon lending money to people who didn't have collateral to pay that loan back. And if you think about that concept, no bank here in the United States would do that, right? You go to the bank for a loan, and it doesn't matter what it's for. It's for a car loan, it's for a home equity loan, it's for a business loan. They're going to say, okay, well, what can you put up in the case that this goes bad? In Muhammad Yunus's case, he went to a lot of local and rural villages, tribes, and said, okay, you know, who can I loan money to that's gonna hire more people, that's gonna make a profit, that's gonna change the way they live. There's a lot of great stories. I encourage you to Google Muhammad Yunus and figure out more about Grameen Bank. But it's really turning the concept of profits and why you be an entrepreneur on its head. If you look at some American examples, it's going to be your Tom Shoes. It's going to be people that are businesses that were started just to help solve a problem in society. They can still be for profit. They can still make money. It doesn't have to be a non-profit. But there's a different reason why people are getting into business. If you look a little bit about just the 5 factors of production, I'm not going to go into this a whole heck of a lot, but you do have to have these concepts when you want to go and start making money. What I do want to focus on is going to be more of your business environment. What are those impacting decisions that influence your decision making, right? So if you just look at business management and job creation, what really impacts that? Well, it's going to be the economic and legal environment. What's going on from a local, from a national, from a global environment standpoint that's going to impact your ability to make decisions or impact the decisions that you do make. Look at the competitive environment, customer service, stakeholder recognition, employee service, concern for the environment. These are generally things, if you look at stakeholders and concern for their environment, that's not why you go into business, right? But customer service in a service-oriented industry is huge nowadays. Most of the time when you buy a product, an actual physical product, it's not just that gallon of milk that you want. It's what all goes into it, how it's sold to you, how it's portrayed. If you look at the social environment, diversity, demographic changes, family changes, what are we talking about with that? If you look at the 1950s and you have the nuclear household and you have the mom and the dad and the 2.5 kids and a dog and all those types of things, that's not what the United States looks like anymore. Even if you look at it from some of the demographic shifts, and we'll look at that here in a couple slides, everything is changing. How does that impact your decision making from a business standpoint? The technological environment, if you look at, what's a good way to explain this? How you pay for things, how that's changed within the past 15 years. PayPal didn't exist 15 years ago. If you look at credit cards and all the technology that goes into a credit card, there's going to be little kiosks so you can just wave your wallet across and it'll record the payment. All these different things are supposed to increase efficiency, increase production, increase sales. So you look at barcodes and you look at quick read codes and you look at
Welcome
QSRs
everybody.
And all those types
This
of
is
things
John
you can
Crable,
scan
your
with your phone.
instructor for
How is
Principles of
technology
Business,
making us
1101
more productive,
BMGT
even
1101.
less productive?
We are going
as
to get
well.
started
really quickly on Chapter 1. The title of
All right,
Chapter 1 is
one
Taking
thing that
Risks
we
and
talked
Making
about earlier is
Profits
going to be that service
within the
based
dynamic
economy.
business
If we aren't
environment.
manufacturing,
if you just read that
products
title,
anymore,
it's
if we're going
extremely
more towards
big.
customer
Who knows
service,
exactly what we're talking
or providing
about
consulting,
when
or,
you just read
whatever
that
it may
title.
be
We're going to try and
from a
break
service
it down
standpoint.
into a couple
What
key
does
areas,
empowerment really
things
mean?
that I want you to
If
be
you
able
look
to take
at
away.
some of
If
your
you go back and listen to
past
the
jobs,
lecture,
jobs you had in
high school, serving ice cream, working at Kohl's, or working at Target, or whatever it may be, it's all customer service, right? So from an empowerment standpoint, we want our managers, we want our management, we want our bosses to be able to give us the ability to make decisions on the fly. So there's a couple things that you have to worry about with that. One, you have to train people in the right system so they're not going off script and damaging that brand, damaging that name too much. But it also gives people a sense of satisfaction, workers a sense of satisfaction. It gives workers a sense of being able to take pleasure out of their job. And if they can go to work and they know that their boss trusts them, man, it makes the entire experience that much better. And so when you do that, and those frontline employees can impact the decisions made by your customers, then everybody starts getting